Okay, so good morning everyone, it's Alan Miles here. I'm the Sales Director for our NetSuite division at Eureka Solutions, and welcome to today's webinar, which is all about the 2021.2 new release. This will be our rundown of the top new features that we see are coming in the new release, which is in the process of being rolled out, and a few reminders just in terms of the process itself. So thanks very much for joining today. So what we'll go through is just an overview of the new release and the process, and then we'll take you through our top 10 highlights that we've found from the new version of the software. So in terms of the process, 2021.2 is actually in the process of being rolled out as we speak. So customers are all put into different phases for the upgrade, which will be rolled out between August and October this year. Most of our customers, I believe, are in the October phase, so that'll be coming up in the next few weeks. To access the information about the new release, you can add the new release portlet to your dashboard, and that will show you your scheduled upgrade date and the links to things like sneak peeks of the new features, the full release notes, and plans of how to test the new version. So to get that onto your dashboard, you can click on Personalize on the dashboard and then choose the new release section to add it onto your main dashboard. If you're a system administrator, then you can request access to the release preview, which is a version of your actual system in the new version. And that's where you can test the new functionality and all your existing processes to make sure there aren't any issues. So that can be done from the setup menu as an administrator, then go into company and release preview. Now, the new features that we'll go through today may be subject to change. There may be some that don't make it into the new release, or some that are added later closer to the release. The release notes are reviewed weekly, so there will be a latest update date on the release notes when you look at them, and that will show you when that was last updated. So they do change from time to time. With the new release portlet, that will give you some links to some of the key features, some overview videos in terms of sneak peeks for the new functionality, and full release notes can be accessed from there as well. And you'll see from this one here, we have the upgrade phase noted. So that is the estimated date of your upgrade. So in this account here, it will be scheduled to be phase 3, which is mid-October, and that's out of the 4 phases that they do. And it notes there that the actual upgrade date and time will be about 3 weeks prior to the upgrade phase. So you know the date at that point. So we'd encourage you to activate the release preview as soon as you can and start having a look at the new features from there. So in terms of the new features, as usual, hundreds of updates, both functional and technical. But we've picked out what we feel is the top 10 features that are going to make a difference to our customers. So number 10, this is expense commitments and budget validation. And I should note that these aren't in any particular order, they're just the top 10 that we've identified. So this is actually a feature that was launched in the last release in 2020.1, which was allowing alerts to be set up when purchase transactions are created, and that would warn if a budget would be exceeded. And that would be a purchase order, purchase invoice being created. That would alert the user and any other people that need to know that might take you over the budget for the period. This also includes a workbook within the Suite Analytics feature, which allows you to report on the budgets versus actual, but include committed costs from the POs as well. So that's already available as of the last release back in the spring. What they're bringing out in the latest version in 2021.2 are some updates to it. So with the current release, you can set up custom budgets, as they're called. So you have to recreate budgets for departments or cost centers or other classifications to be used for the alerts. So within 2021.2, they're changing that to allow that to look into the standard GL budgets, which you may already have set up in the system, rather than having to set up custom budgets to provide that validation. The other update in 2021.2 is the validation of project-specific budgets. So instead of just looking at the GL code or some of the classifications, if you have project as an option for your budgets, then that can be validated as well. So this is a nice feature, something that's been asked for quite a while, and has obviously been updated in the next release as well. So that just gives an extra bit of control when you're looking at budgetary control. And that can be either just warnings to the user that it might take them over budget, which then could potentially trigger a separate approval process from the standard one, or it can actually prevent transactions being created as well if you want the full control over the budget. So that's something we can demo now to show you the existing version, and that will be updated to give the other options in 2021.2. The next new feature, so number 9, is project-based approvals. So anybody who uses NetSuite for project management will be able to take advantage of this feature. So this means that any purchase orders or invoices or expenses which are created that relate to projects can now be automatically routed to the project manager for approval. That was something that we could configure or customize before with some workflows or customization, but now becomes a default option as part of the approval process. That approval can be completed in the user interface within the NetSuite UI or via an email, which was actually a feature that was introduced in 2021.1 to be able to approve via email. So both of these features, the project manager approvals and the email approvals, is part of a module called Suite Approvals, which can be implemented to set up the approval workflows rather than building custom workflows. So again, that is a module that can be installed for NetSuite customers if you want to review how the approvals are being done in the system. And that has some nice other features in there, like delegated approvals and department-based approvals that again cut down the need for custom workflows. The next new feature relates to credit card integration. So what NetSuite calls corporate cards for your company credit cards. Back a couple of releases ago, they launched an automated import routine for credit card statements, which at first was only available for American Express. So with 2021.2, there'll now be an option to connect to other card providers rather than just American Express. So providers such as Visa or MasterCard will now be supported. However, this does need some customization to create the connector. What they're launching in 2021.2 is the option to connect to these systems rather than an automated connection. So for now, that's something that we would have to help with, but there isn't an option to do it now, rather than just supporting American Express. So what that means is that you can import statements from credit cards and use them to populate employee expense claims as well. So that just speeds up the process of getting expense claims in the system. And those ones would be automatically identified as being paid on a corporate credit card, which can be associated with the user themselves. So this is mirroring functionality that's available on the bank statement import, which again was launched last year, which allows you to automate the import of bank statements and feed into a reconciliation process. So this now allows credit card statements imported with that custom connector and used to populate the expenses. The next one to make you aware of is number 7, which is there's a new rate provider for exchange rate automatic updates. So at the moment, there are 2 providers for the exchange rate updates. This allows you to choose per currency whether you want NetSuite to update the exchange rates every night for you to make sure there's an up-to-date exchange rate rather than defining your own period-based exchange rates. So Refinitiv and Xignite are the current providers. It was announced that Refinitiv will no longer be available from the 1st of October. So anyone who's on that just now will need to switch to another provider. So that took us down to just Xignite being the only provider. So as of 2021.2, HSBC will be introduced as a new rate provider option. So obviously one of the largest banks in the world, so very trusted provider. So the rates that NetSuite can update nightly will be able to be chosen from HSB or Xignite from the next release. Should say as well, if there are any questions as we go along, there is the Q&A panel down the bottom of your Zoom screen. So if there's any questions, just fire them into that Q&A section and we can answer them at the end of the session. Number 6 then, this relates to anybody who uses the stock based system within NetSuite. So a feature called supply allocation, which again was launched a few releases back and has been constantly improved and enhanced within each release since. So there's a few improvements to the supply allocation feature. The supply allocation feature itself just provides a bit more logic and flexibility in determining how to allocate stock to sales orders rather than just allocating or committing available stock or the complete quantity. This allows you to put some logic and flexibility around the rules of how the stock is allocated. And that can include things like pre-allocating stock that's coming in on purchase orders or allocating stock based on different sales channels to make sure you've always got a certain amount available for orders coming in from your website or different marketplaces, etc. So that's all existing functionality. The improvements that are coming in the next release in 2021.2 are things like being able to optimize that allocation process for revenue or gross profit. So that means that the orders that are going to give the most income or gross profit to them would be allocated first, or based on maybe the stock that is the lowest cost, to make sure that the profit in the order is highest. So there'll be some rules around that brought in to make sure the stock is allocated in the most effective way. There will also be an allocate button added to sales orders, which allows individual sales orders to be allocated rather than having to run it through a process. And that means you can prioritize a particular sales order or multiple sales orders by manually allocating stock to them individually to make sure that they get the stock allocated before the main process is run. And what will also be added is that any changes to allocations will be logged in the system notes to make sure that it's keeping an audit trail of any changes for orders that have been allocated and deallocated or allocations changed as well, just to make that easier to report on. Another improvement is what they call fill and kill. So if you have a sales order where you only have some of the stock available, and basically the customer will only want whatever you have available, they won't want the rest of it to be fulfilled on a follow order, then it allows you to allocate the available stock, and then the remaining order will be closed off. So you just fulfill what you've got, and the rest of the order is cancelled. So that'll be an automated feature as well in the next release. Okay. The next couple relate to the analytics workbooks. If you didn't attend it, I would recommend looking at the recording of our Suite Analytics Workbooks webinar that we did back in July. This is a feature that was made available for all NetSuite customers, again, a couple of years ago, and has been updated in every release since, and is just giving you a way of analysing data within NetSuite instead of taking it out to Excel or other reporting tools. So the analytics workbook feature, we covered that in the webinar. The improvements, the first one is to be able to link data sets. So the data set would be the data that the analytics workbook is going to report on. At the moment, you can include multiple data sets. So the example of that would be a data set that includes all the transactions in the system, and then one that includes your budgets. But at the moment, within the workbooks feature, each table that you have in there, or pivot table or chart, can only include data from a single data set, even if there's multiple data sets in the workbook itself. So you can't compare data across two different unrelated pieces of information as far as the system's concerned. So with 2021.2, there is a way to link data sets together so that you can then combine them into one pivot table or chart. So that allows you to do things like comparing budgets versus actuals, which is something you can't do at the moment with the analytics workbooks, especially if you wanted to compare multiple budgets versus actuals. So I know some customers have spoken to us about that already, and this is a feature that we've been waiting on to be able to do that. So the one caveat at the moment is that this does require a bit of scripting to be able to link the data sets. That's done behind the scenes rather than being able to do it as a user within the NetSuite interface. So this is something that our development team can do to join the data sets together, and that would allow you to then build pivot tables and charts that compare data that the system would previously have thought was unrelated. So the budget versus actual is the first use case that we've seen that could be really useful for, but there will be other ones as well. Number 4 also relates to the analytic workbooks, and these are updates to the interface itself within the workbooks feature. So the one that's really good is that pivot tables can now be exported to CSV. So that was a feature that was available for tables within the workbooks and charts. So you could export the data from them. But the pivot tables being a bit more complex, that's just been built into the next version in 2021.2. So that means you'll be able to build the pivot tables within the system, but still then export them out to CSV for sharing or further analysis from there. So that completes the ability to export all the different chart types from within the workbooks feature to CSV. In the last release, they launched conditional formatting within the workbooks. So again, on a pivot table, you could have cells or rows highlighted based on a criteria. So if it was a sales report, you could say anything above a certain value or below a certain value would be highlighted in a certain color. Building in extra functionality to make this comparable to the save search functionality means that they now can include icons in the conditional formatting. So there could be an icon added next to an amount to highlight it as well within the pivot tables and tables. There's also a performance improvement option now. There's always been an option to use cached data within the workbooks, which means it uses a snapshot of the data captured at a certain point. That can now be set as a default. So in your NetSuite system, there can be a default that anytime you load a workbook within the analytics feature, then it uses cached data rather than running a real-time report at that point. And that means the initial load times, if you've got quite a big data set or data sets that the data is coming from, then it means the workbooks will load quicker because it's using cached data instead of the live data at that point. And the data that it uses for that cache is updated automatically every 60 minutes. So that's the most the data would be out of date by would be the 1 hour. And then you have an option to reload the data once the report has loaded to make it real-time data from there. So that's just to help with those kind of larger data sets in case that is an issue. As I say, we've got the recording of the webinar that we did. We'll probably look to repeat that to include some of the additional features as they come in once we've got access to the new version in our demo accounts. But if you don't have the recording, just ask your account manager to share it and we'll be happy to send you the recording to that webinar as well. So number 3 is another stock-based feature, tend to use in the system for stock and order processing. This is actually something that was, it's been flagged by some customers before as something that is a feature request for NetSuite. So it's actually quite a small change from a technical perspective and isn't a big function as such. But what this means is that at the moment, if you have stock items in the system, and you need to change the asset account or the cost of goods sold account that the item uses. If you restructure your chart of accounts or need to change that for any reason, then at the moment in NetSuite, that would trigger a mass update of all historical transactions to make them post to the new accounts. So it means that your historical reporting for reports that are already have been produced would be changed in the system, which could cause issues for historical reporting. So the change in 2021.2 is that the changes will no longer result in the mass update of historical transactions. So you can change the asset account and the cost of goods sold account on a stock item, and the historical transactions and reports will no longer be affected. So won't affect too many customers, but for those that have highlighted that as a feature request, and that has now been actioned from the new release. So the last couple of features then. So number 2 is called payment link. What this allows you to do is to allow customers to pay their sales invoices online via a credit card or PayPal integration for payment. So what this means is that there'll be an email that you send the invoice in, will include a hyperlink or a QR code, which will take the customer to an online payment page, which can be branded with your logo, some other information there. So they go to a page that can be accessed on the web or on a mobile device, and will allow them to choose how much they're going to pay on the invoice from there, and pay it using credit cards or PayPal as an option. You can control from within NetSuite what the payment methods that you will accept are, and whether you allow partial payments or not. So you could enforce that the full invoice has to be paid using that method. So that can all be configured with the settings, and that's picked up by the online page that they go to for payment. And then the one thing that needs to be configured there is you need to have an account with a payment provider, a payment gateway. So there are some that are default options with NetSuite, like WorldPay and CyberSource, and there's an option to add the PayPal option within there as well. So it's just allowing a bit of self-service. If you have a large number of invoices that customers maybe want to pay by card or using a PayPal account, then that can be a good option. And this ties in with the individuals using the NetSuite e-commerce solution as well, that can be triggered from there to allow them to pay through the same option for invoices generated through the e-commerce system as well. So obviously these are all new. We're still going through the training and still have to get our hands on a demo account for these, so we can provide further information on these particular ones that are quite a big change once that comes through to us as well. Okay, and finally, and another improvement to the bank reconciliation process, which is called cash application. So this is an enhancement to the import process and the matching process, which again has been gradually released and enhanced over the last few releases. So you already have the option now to automatically import a bank statement once per day with a direct feed from the bank, or import them manually, and feed that into a matching process where you can get the system to match as many transactions as possible through an automated process, just to leave the last few to be manually matched. So recent improvements have included things like the ability to automatically suggest transactions to be created for things like bank charges, and to obviously automate the import process, which was launched at the end of 2020. So with this feature, it's quite a big update. Allows the payments from customers that are found in the statement to be automatically created in NetSuite if they don't exist already, and also apply them to open invoices. So if you have lots of customer payments or coming through from the statement that haven't been added into NetSuite yet, then the import process can suggest those payments to be created and actually which invoices to apply them to in the system as well. The way it does that is it can match by customer, first of all. So it'll have a go at either fully matching the customer based on the name, or a partial match of the name to suggest which customer that the payment has come from. Or you can also set up rules, which allows you to map customers. So if they have a slightly different name in the statement or reference, then you'll be able to set up mapping rules that the system will remember for the next time you import the data to allow it to match to the right customer. If it finds an invoice number within the payment, like in the reference, then it will actually try and match it to the correct sales invoice. But if it doesn't find the invoice number, then it will give you suggested invoices based on the customer match. So it'll show you open invoices for the customer to suggest which ones you might want to apply the payment to. And that was all tied into the process, the matching process. There's shortcuts to this process from within the bank, the match banking data section within NetSuite. So again, that's just trying to automate the process if you find that you're getting customer payments in your bank statements before you've actually recorded them into NetSuite. What happens then is if you match the payments and they're applied to the invoices as part of the matching process, then they will automatically be matched off and cleared from the reconciliation process for you, because the system obviously knows that they've already been reconciled as part of this process. So it's just another example of a lot of these themes of the updates are to do with automation and cutting down manual processes. This hopefully is a good one that will apply to lots of customers who maybe want to speed up the process of allocating or applying payments to invoices. So that is our rundown of the top 10 features. Hopefully there's some that will, or lots in there that will be of use to most customers. We have one final bonus feature to focus on, which isn't part of the new release, but it's something that's been on the way for a while and is now available in the UK. So we finally have access to Suite People HR. So this is NetSuite's HR management module, which runs completely within the NetSuite system. So it's now available for UK customers. It was rolled out in the USA as well, so there are features in there that apply to any UK NetSuite users who have a US operation as well. So that has now been made available to us, and there's an initial release for the UK, which includes certain HR related functionality, which is like an extension of the core NetSuite finance system and the employee center as well. So what that includes is your core HR database for your employees and all the information about their contract with you. There's a leave management module, which allows you to employees to request leave and approve leave through the employee center, whether it's holidays or other types of leave. From an employment side of things, there's a salary review process and managing benefits on top of that as well. An onboarding process, so being able to set up tasks that need to be completed when new people join the organization. Workflows planning, which allows you to create what are called job requisitions if somebody in a department needs to plan for a new hire. So that can go through a process of being approved and accepted in the system. There are some employee engagement features, things that have been able to recognize achievements from employees. And then an optional module on top of the core HR is performance management, where you can track goals and KPIs across the organization. And that can include things like setting goals using NetSuite Save Searches to pull data from the sales figures for the sales team, for example, or other KPIs out of the system to be used for goal management within the HR module too. Suite People is an additional module, so there is a cost to purchase it. So there's a per employee license cost to move on to Suite People. That cost does include the employee center, though, so that the cost of any employee center licenses you have would be offset against that cost to add the HR functionality in there. This has just been made available to us as a feature, so we're going through a training process just now to get up to speed with the functionality. So we'll be getting back in touch once we've been through that and when we're in a position to be able to demo it. But if any customers want to have a chat about how that might work for them and eventually set up a demo, then we'd be happy to organise that as soon as you're ready to look at it. But that's a really positive step in terms of version 1 being available for the UK now, because we've been waiting for the HR functionality to make its way over here for a little while. So with that, we'll finish up with any questions that you may have. Okay. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them into the Q&A section or send them through the chat, whatever is easier for you, and we can go through them. Okay, it doesn't look as if we have any questions, so that's good. I'm taking that as we've answered everything that you might want to know about each of those features. So yeah, just thank you very much for attending. We like to keep these just kind of short, just to cover the key features, and we just encourage you to have a look at the release preview once it's available to you and activate that through the administration section of NetSuite. And please let us know if you'd like to look into any of the features we've covered today or anything else that you find as part of the review of the new features. And yeah, thank you very much for attending, and we will speak to you all soon. Thank you very much.